Hi guys, I'm Adam Wilborn from WhatCulture. Very pleased to say I am joined now by the legend that is Diamond Dallas Page. DDP, thank you so much for taking the time to chat to us today.
I just took a little break time in between getting the workout, a little bit of a run through these beautiful hills over here in Windermere is where we are now. Is that how you say it? Windermere?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's beautiful up here. We're right on the lake.
Oh, wow.
My wife went for the Airbnb thing, and we'll do some of those in some hotels, but we're literally looking at the lake, and it's a beautiful manor that they separated into like two different sections that they rent out, and it's really beautiful here. We're taking some really cool hikes and stuff. So beautiful part of the country.
Yeah, indeed. And I should say the reason that you are here in the UK, and it's great to have you here, is these DDP Yoga UK workshops. Tell us more about that for people who are unaware. And there's still time, people can come to your shows that are taking place across the country.
Yeah, so we only did 3 locations because I'm also going to be doing For the Love of Wrestling on the 29th and 30th, I believe those dates are. So in between there, and with, we flew into Manchester, and then we came up here to Windermere for 3 days, and then tomorrow we'll go to Glasgow. There's the show, the workshops are in Glasgow, Newcastle, and Birmingham, but Birmingham's sold out. It's like got over 150 people going to be working out with me, and anytime I do one of these things, it's really like inspiration meets perspiration. As soon as they walk in, anybody who pretty much is doing our program knows who my wife, Paige. So when when we walk in, or when the people walk in, they come right to us and we get a picture with them. So they get a selfie. And I'm sure I'll be told a lot of stories from people with their transformations, because man, it's all over the world. DDPY is everywhere at this point. And it's really cool to come across people. I haven't been here since before the pandemic. But in 2000, I think it was 2018 was the last time I was here. And I tried to get over here every couple of years, but of course that moved everything farther. And next time I come, I'll do London and do the south part of the UK. And then eventually I want to get over to Ireland. But for this trip here, tomorrow, Saturday morning, we are at Glasgow. And one of my instructors, Murray, he's from Glasgow, he does classes and stuff. So all his people are going to be there, plus all the people who do it and then drive in for it. People come from a long way just to come in for the day. And the following day is Newcastle. And they're the only 2 workshops that are open right now. Like I said, Birmingham's already sold out. But it's very personal when people come, because many of them are just going to try it. They want to see what this is like, face to face. But most of them are on the app. They're on the DDP Yoga Now app. And anybody can get on that thing, and it costs nothing for the first week to try it. So like no one's just going to, any kind of, whether it's Google Play or iTunes or wherever, the App Store for Apple, they can get the app, or they can just go to ddpyoga.com, which always has the best deal in case they decide to stay on, because I don't charge the upcharge that iTunes does or Google. Like I say, the actual workshops are very personal. People get to come in and and they get to me Paige right away and start telling us their story, take a picture, and then we just move through the line till everybody's in. And then I get up there and I just do what I do. I inspire people, and it's infectious, and people want to see that firsthand. And then I break it down so no one really gets lost. If someone's new to DDPY, I do what I call the Diamond Dozen, which breaks it down for one move at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And this way, people who are new to it or aren't in the greatest shape, they can participate. And then after that, I do a workout, and it could be anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes. And a lot of people who just came to really learn about it, it's funny because they might sit down in the beginning, but eventually they're going to get up because it's like, oh, I already know how to do all these moves because he just showed me how to do them. And so they do what, I've always encouraged people to do their own thing. In other words, you know, DDPY meets you where you are. And I show all the modifications as you go through the program. So it's really a fun event. And the energy is through the roof because this isn't something where you reach the arms to the heavens so the universe smiles back at you. This isn't what we're doing. We're flexing and engaging, and from punching 1-1, 1-2 to Hulk it up, brother. Attention. I mean, it's very it's really live. It's nothing like what people, if they've never done it before, it's not what they think it is.
No, I remember you doing a routine with our very own Simon Miller a while back when you were hanging out with him. And it feels like I'm banging this drum because I remember we spoke about it the last time I had the chance to chat to you, because obviously you see the transformation for, like you say, so many people. Resurrection of Jake the Snake is the obvious example of that, not just for Jake, but for Scott as well, of course. But as someone who follows you on social media as well, you've got those big names associated with how life-changing DDP Yoga is. But then you have people, just like you say, just everyday people. I mean, I saw you tweeting a photo of a guy called Travis on your Twitter the other day. It's right. Astonishing that it's arguably sort of comparable to your wrestling careers, how well you are known now for changing so many people's lives.
It's funny. I was talking to Brian Alvarez, who also writes for Meltzer's Observer. And this is back when he was doing his own thing. And so it's about 12 years ago, maybe 13 years ago. And he said, so where's Diamond Dallas Page 5 years from now? So this is 13 years ago, and our thing exploded 11 years ago. But it had taken 8 years before it exploded. So it was an 8-year overnight success. So Alvarez had been doing the program and he knew about Arthur, but it hadn't gone viral yet, that disabled veteran that I helped. But I knew that story, and I knew what potential the program had. And so many people get right up to the edge and then they quit. Like if they just went a little bit farther, there's Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich. There was one of the stories was 3 feet from gold. And the story was this miner, when the big gold rush hit America and everybody was coming from all over to find gold, he had struck it, but then that vein dried up. But he went back. He knew there was more. He knew there was more gold in the hills. But he didn't do the proper excavating. He just went back and he got money from his people to continue going and going and going. And finally, he gave up and he sold it to another company who did the excavating and what needed to be done. 3 feet away was the biggest gold strike ever. 3 feet from gold. And that was the way it was with DDP Yoga. I knew what I had, but it wasn't taking off yet. And probably about year 6 is when Alvarez said to me, where do you think Diamond Dallas Page will be 5 years from now? And in my country, there was a guy named Jack LaLanne who was the fitness guy, like the fitness guy, right on up to his 96. I mean, at 95, he had, like, in his mouth, he had 3 boats behind him as he was swimming at 95 years old. It was unbelievable. He was the fitness guy. Of course, Tony Robbins is the inspirational guy. And then, I said 5 years from now, I'll start to be known as the new Jack LaLanne, meets Tony Robbins, meets straight Richard Simmons, who was a very flamboyant cat, who helped a lot of people that were big, big people. And I said, to be honest, Brian, I honestly think that, eventually DDP Yoga is going to dwarf my wrestling career. And he was like, hey, I do the program. It's great, but that's a bold statement. Like, bro, you had a hell of a career. I said, yeah, I know, man, but I just know what's going to, I see it. And, 2 years later, it exploded and it just kept going, because we have so many stories. And every year we do this contest called the Positively Unstoppable Challenge.
Remember.
And whoever is the number one person, and how they get picked is obviously their physical transformation, but it's also their mental transformation. And then it's how much work do they put in to telling their story. Like, how much work? Like, so because when you put that personal work into yourself and you really get to see your changes, where people really screw up is they don't take pictures, they don't take videos. And I mean in life, when they start a transformation, they don't remember where they came from. They get, like, say they lose 50 pounds or 60 pounds and X amount of inches. Well, for the last 3 months, maybe it hasn't changed. So they get down on themselves and they start pulling themselves, what I call emotional gravity. But if they have that stuff in the beginning, they can go, oh, whoa, I've really come a long way. And it's all about building confidence, and that's the real power of the program, building confidence.
Absolutely. And if you want to find out more information about it, ddpyogaworkshops.com. Definitely worth checking out. And as Dallas said, there's still spaces on those shows in Glasgow and Newcastle, but he's understandably Birmingham already sold out. To talk a little bit about wrestling now, Dallas, obviously you celebrated your birthday around WrestleMania weekend. I saw lots of photos on your social of you hanging out with the guys. What did you make of WrestleMania? What did you make of the decisions that they made with, Cody Rhodes in particular? I'd love to know your thoughts on that.
I don't think it was a bad thing. I would love to have. I would love to have him been crowned the Universal Championship, which is like our Oscar in the business, And I think he earned it, But obviously Roman was not ready to walk away yet. You know what I mean? Because Roman is. I mean, he's cemented now. Yeah. We saw the huge push that the people gave him with the Shield, but then when WWE started to push him, they kind of dissed him, But that guy was working harder than anybody out there to earn that respect. He really was. And his promos got a little better and a little better. And today, I love to watch him talk.
Yeah.
I mean, he has grown. And that's what the fans don't understand sometimes. It takes a while to really get that confidence and that comfortability of being out there and carrying that. I mean, he's going to hit 1,000 days easy, and some, who knows? I think it's good in the way that the story isn't over. And I think everybody knows that. And, there's no better distraction than Brock Lesnar.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And Cody's a tough son of a bitch. I think he, it's completely different than my run, but some things that might be like you didn't get it right away.
Yeah.
You didn't get it. Like you had like even the United States Championship, and that was the first big title that I had that meant something and was on me for a while. But the people wanted to see it so bad. And I think that Cody's earned a lot of respect. When he went out there on that third match with Seth Rollins, and he took his jacket off, you could hear the people go, whoa, like it was like went through the whole building because they were like, wow, he's gonna wrestle like that's not a gimmick. Like, and then you find out it's ripped right off the bone as Pat. So I think that got him unbelievable, like cred with the fans.
Yeah.
And then to do the whole match, because it's not like he tore it during it and they didn't know. When something like that happens, oh my God, I'm really injured. But, he sold it because he had to. But, you felt it. So I think that gave him a lot of credit. And I think that the fans, when you don't give somebody something right away, they wanted even more.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
So I don't think it was a bad thing.
Yeah, I think, a lot of people thought that, and, I'm inclined to agree with them that maybe they'd missed the opportunity there to crown him at WrestleMania. But you listen to the reactions, he's still getting week after week. And if anything, that adversity and like you say, the redemption arc featuring Brock Lesnar is a hell of a road to take to, I don't know, SummerSlam, let's say, for a crowning of Cody Rhodes. But you've got to deal with this issue of the bloodline, which was also a part of Mania, of course, with Sami and Kevin. You had your fair share of run-ins with factions over the years, and obviously that was kind of a formative part of AEW as well, which you've been involved with. What do you think of WWE sort of bringing that back in now, like I say, with the bloodline, with the Judgment Day, with the LWO now, for example?
Well, I'm a big fan of the Judgment Day. LWO will be, I think that's going to be pretty cool. But the bloodline, I mean, I loved it when Sammy was in it. I love it anyway, because really, Jay or Jimmy, like normally when you have a tag team, one guy always, steps over the other guy, whether it's the Rockers, Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart, Hart Foundation. We go on and on and on. But I think Jimmy and Jay every week get stronger. I think they're both guys that can carry that friggin' Universal title. Wow. I think both of them could have an unbelievable run. Eventually, it's going to happen. Eventually. Because they're not going to stay tag team their whole career, but the only reason Appa and Sika, they did. So maybe they'll be the guys that don't. But I think both of those guys could do incredibly well on their own. But right now, let's hang with the bloodline. Let's keep that going because it's the highest hype you could have, and there's not 12 of them. There's really 3, but there's not a better, the wise man. I mean, the stuff that they can, and I love the way, when Sammy was with the group, you knew it was making him. It was making him. It was making him every time a little bit more. Eric Bischoff likened Sammy's story to my story because, both guys, we were both like mid-card one day. It looks like it was never going to go past that. And then one day, boom, the fans made that happen.
Yeah.
That's, if I didn't have that Diamond Cutter sign, I don't know if they ever would have given me the opportunity, even though it was funny because it was my idea that I brought to Kevin, and Kevin loved it. That I brought it to Scott. Scott loved it. But I didn't pitch that idea. Kevin did. So a lot of people always thought that that was Kevin's idea. And I know that because I was listening to Kevin Sullivan's podcast, and he was talking about me on one of his shows. So I listened to it, and he went, man, he goes, Kevin Nash, he pushed for that. He really felt that, Diamond was ready to go. And Kev knew that if it didn't happen, I was going to ask for my release. And I was like that close, like saying I'm done. And then it was such a natural thing for me with the NWO because of my relationship with Scott and Kev. I mean, like crazy, real relationship. All of us bottom guys at the same time, and really good friends. I brought Scott in, changed his look, the whole deal. And those guys never forgot that. Like they lit the friggin' rocket for my career. Macho sent me to a different universe.
Yes.
And I can't even put into words like how big that was. And for Mach to put me over right there in the middle, like Macho and Hulk Hogan, they controlled their spot. If they didn't want to do the job, they didn't do it. And that was the end of the discussion. I never asked to work with Macho. He asked to work with me. So it took me to a different level. And I think Sammy, a hero is defined by the size of his opponent. Look who Cody's going against right now. And Brock is a much better heel because he's such a believable badass.
Yeah.
And he was fun to watch as a baby face. He was fun because he really looked like he was having fun out there. But he also has fun when he's beating someone to death too. He is the beast incarnate. There's nobody with a better moniker than that. That's as true as that. But Code will, it's going to be great to see where it goes and how this rolls, and just got to stay healthy. And for Sammy, same thing. And KO in the middle of all that. Like there's so many cool things happening there right now. So but again, the Bloodline, one of my favorite things to watch. Like I'm the guy who tapes everything and then I zip through things. I don't zip through a lot anymore. Like there's still some things which I won't talk about. I'd rather talk about the positive stuff. Like when I saw Judgment Day, man. And then Dominic, here's this kid. If you go back to Ray and Eddie, when Dominic had like blonde hair, he dyed his hair blonde. He was a kid, like I'm 13 years old. Kid's been around the business his whole life. But he's figuring out how to wrestle. He was never training to be a wrestler over that period. Ray was. It's funny because Ray in 92, like I'm positive I'm going to be PWI Rookie of the Year. I know it's going to happen because nobody can meet me at that spot at that time. But then Eric Watts came in with Bill Watts, his dad, and he beat Arn Anderson. He was getting pushed to the moon. And I was a runner-up. And I was like, man, Meltzer's going to know. I'm number one. And I look at the thing and I'm saying, who the fuck is Rey Mysterio? So years later, he would show up at WCW, and I'll never forget. Someone went, "Hey, Rey Mysterio's going to the ring." I go, "Rey Mysterio?" And I walked right out there, and I watched the people, and I realized I was a very distant second to Rey Mysterio because he's a real life action hero. He's a superhero.
And a word on Dominic there. I was going to ask you about that because I saw a lovely photo of you celebrating Ray going into the Hall of Fame, of course. And I think myself included, a lot of people thought okay, Dom's going to be brought in by his dad and they'll do the tag team stuff. And then it's like, okay, when Ray goes away or wants to do something else, what's going to happen to Dom? Is Dom just going to be constantly in his dad's shadow? And the way they've subverted that and used him going to the Judgment Day and doing that, I think it's been sensational in terms of Dominic establishing himself. I mean, you just need to listen when they do those promos and they go through, you've got people like Finn Balor and Rhea Ripley and Damian Priest cutting these promos as heels. And Dom only has to put the mic near his mouth and he gets that reaction. It's amazing.
If I was booking, he would right now, he'd win by the skin of his teeth, but he wouldn't lose a match.
Yeah.
Which would piss people off so much even more, I would have him work. I don't care who he's going against. I don't care if it's an enhancement guy. He goes over by the skin of his teeth with the help of the Judgment Day. It would just piss him off even more. But I love that kid. I mean, that kid, first of all, I didn't realize it, but our birthday's the same day, April 5th. But he's always so polite, such a good young man. Like Ray and his mom did really good with him. And I really, really, really care. I love that kid. He's awesome. But all those guys, Priest and Rhea could have given China a run for her money back when she was wrestling guys. Because I see like Rhea or Charlotte, they could be wrestling guys.
Yeah, Rhea dropped on Raw this week, I think it was. It looked great.
What did she do?
She laid him out on the outside in the midst of a match, I think.
Dude, she's believable as hell. And I saw like a reincarnation, like how they showed her on Instagram. I did not know that she was such a tall, beautiful blonde. And she's morphed into this sexy, badass, vampire-esque, chick. She's believable as hell. And I think there's a lot of really cool things happening in the WWE right now. And, I think it's great for the fans. I think AEW was great for the fans because it gave if there's no AEW, Cody doesn't come back with this monster push. It doesn't happen, but he walking away, I always tell people you can't be afraid to walk away from the table. You got to be able to, if you really believe in yourself. And there's one thing that, Cody is exactly like me, and it's work ethic. Like Cody has an insane work ethic, and he talks about it all the time. Do the work. On the back of those belts, a lot of them are like, do the work. Yeah,
absolutely. One final question before we wrap up here. Because you see so many brilliant young guys coming into the business now. I'm thinking of like a Daniel Garcia in AEW, for example. I know they're going to bring Nick Wayne in when he literally turns 8.
Oh, my God.
To wrestling.
God. That kid.
Yeah.
That kid's unbelievable. He does DDP yoga. You know why? Because he's so ready sore because he's been wrestling 3 years and he does crazy shit, but he also sells his ass off. Like he'll send me a match here and there and he does some diamond cutters I would never even have thought about doing. Like that kid's going to be, it's all about the preventative maintenance. Like if there's a young stud that, I would call out and say, keep your eye on that guy as he comes. Most people don't even know who he is. We know, but most people don't. I'll tell you the guy that I'm going to call. And I called this the other day. I was on the BWA, the Black Wrestling Association, the podcast that they do. And they said, who do you think could be next? Well, Mello is unbelievable. Yeah. And what a great match. I was there for that match of him and Bronson. And Bronson's like one of my I love that kid. He works out with me, trains with me. All the Steiner boys, from Scott and Rick, they all come and work out with me occasionally. But Bronson, I think, is going to be a real superstar up there. But the one guy that I think, just listen to him talk and the way he moves, don't know about his work because I haven't seen him work, but I'm going to call that guy Trick, who's with Mello.
Yes, Trick Williams.
Dude, he's got it.
That's it, isn't it? Yeah.
He's got it. And he's been watching since he was a kid. So he's got it really across the board. I haven't seen him work yet, but I would bet it's going to be pretty decent.
Yeah.
Especially for his being green. But he's great. He played, I'm pretty sure he played for South Carolina, the football team there. And he's a big kid. He's like 6'4", 6'5". Yeah. And he's a handsome son of a bitch, and he can talk.
Yeah.
He can talk. So those Bronson, Mello, Trick, Nick Wayne, these are guys coming up and Nick ain't even in the mix yet.
Yeah.
But Nick can already pretty much work with anyone right now. Yeah. That's how smooth that kid is.
Yeah, all I was going to ask you was any advice because I always ask people about advice for people getting in the business, but obviously you're an example for people who are slightly older getting into the business. Do you think that's still possible nowadays? And if so, what advice would you give them?
Well, if they have a pedigree, if they came from the NFL, if they came from some, wrestling, some sort of background that whether it was MMA, or whatever, it's kind of like Ken Shamrock did. When you're someone like that, that's different. If it's just straight out, though, it's really going to be hard unless you've made a name for yourself in that independent world. Now, if you're a guy who's already I don't believe anybody will be able to just start training at 35, just because of what the animal has become, just what people are having to do. And it's really hard to open someone's eyes unless they've been on the independent circuit. If they started at 35, they're on that independent circuit and they're wrestling. They don't have 3 kids. It's just them and their wife. They're both following this dream, and they're working nonstop. You have to understand what I did. I worked nonstop wrestling, period. And in the beginning of it, I was getting paid. And then I tore my rotator cuff, and they fired me. And then Jake Roberts 3 weeks later was living with me for 3 months. That's one of the reasons why all this shit happened. Dusty Rhodes was there for me. When Florida Championship Wrestling, he never saw me as a wrestler, though. And when I tore my rotator cuff, and Jake spent, I was on the road with Jake, on and off the road for 11 months. He was, I could bring him whatever if I worked independently and I wasn't with him, I'd bring him the matches and he would critique my tapes. So I got Jake Roberts, like Yoda, critiquing what I'm doing. I've got Dusty, who's taking me in like a brother. When he died, Cody called me and he said, Dusty wanted you to know. It's so funny because sometimes they'll call him Dad, but a lot of times they'll call him Dusty when he's talking about Dust. And he said, Dusty wanted you to know. And Dusty had told me this a number of times over our years together. But to hear from Cody at the end, he said, Dusty told me he got 5 friends. You could count them on one hand, and some of those guys fell off the hand. And some came back. He told Cody, I never fell off that hand. From 1989, from the day we met till when he left this earth, I was one of his, and he was one of mine. Closest. So you had both of them. And what was one of my favorite moments was I know I'm coming back. I've got a meeting with Dusty. We haven't talked in a few months, probably about 3 or 4 months. And I went down the power plant, which is just like, that's the predecessor to the WWE Performance Center. That's where Triple H was, Steven Regal. Even though Regal didn't need to be there, he was there and teaching guys all the time. And I was one of them. And I went down the power plant that day, and Dusty was there. Give you a big hug. We talked a couple minutes. He goes, jump in the ring with this kid. I want to see what he's got. So I went in there. It's one of the guys he was looking at, and I got in the ring with him for about 20 minutes. Then he was like, that's good. And I got out. There was 4 rings there. And what I always do, I go from ring to ring to ring. I was never there and not working, either with someone, teaching someone, I think that was the biggest thing that really made me understand the business, because I knew what to do. But when you can teach someone else what to do, while you're teaching them, you start to get better. And you start going to yourself, as you're teaching it, you're figuring it out. And what I learned, and it applies to everything, the more you help someone, the more you teach someone, the more you learn, the better you get. So I didn't know, because I thought Dusty left right after that, but he didn't. He stayed in the back office, because there was 3 cameras there. And he stayed almost the whole day. I didn't know. The next day, I show up in his office at CNN Center, and he says, we talk about family stuff and blah, blah, blah. And he said, so, what do you got? I know you always got something. And I had this fishbowl idea, now I'm going to pull out the names, of the top performers. Of course, it's going to be enhancement guys. So but I get a few wins coming in, and he said, D, I know you always seen yourself as the top performer in our business. And I got to be honest with you, D, I never saw it till yesterday.
Wow.
He said, I was there all day. He said, if you can keep doing what you're doing, you might just pull this shit off. So if there's someone who's going to follow my roadmap, it's next to impossible, because you don't have Dusty Rhodes or Jake Roberts. You know what I mean? That's a big deal, and are you going to work at it 24/7? Like, there was a point when me and Jake were on the road, and a guy brought a box of VHS tapes. It was 40 tapes, 2-hour tapes of nothing but Jake Roberts. From every federation he was ever in. And Jake couldn't give a shit. He was like, oh, thank you. I took him. I watched everything. I'll tell you my favorite match of all of them. This guy doesn't get enough credit. Ted DiBiase was one of the greatest workers ever in our business. He became a character which overshadowed his work, but his work was insane. I mean, as good as it gets.
Yeah.
And there's a match of him and Jake, and in the Garden, when it used to be on Madison Square Garden TV, and they went 30 minutes. They had people pulling their hair out. They might have taken 5 bumps, maybe. They didn't need to. They were great storytellers. They knew how to grab a hold and make it mean something. Like, it was powerful shit, man. So again, could it happen? Sure, it could happen. but they're going to have their own story that's going to be really intense. You know, because when people ask me, what do you think I should do? I say, if you can't breathe without it, you should do it. But if you can breathe without it, don't even waste your time. Because it's going to be the hardest thing you've ever done to get. Now, if you're going to be happy on the independent scenes and you can't breathe without that, you should definitely do that.
Yeah.
But do my shit so your body doesn't get as beat up because you're already starting way older. Like,
Indeed.
The only thing I would change ever in my life, and there's not really anything, but I would have been doing some form of yoga if I could talk to my younger self. Some form, forget me coming up with my own. That would have happened anyway. But that and take jujitsu, because I think it's one of the greatest martial arts you can be a part of, the community, the respect. You know, as a young man, I think everyone needs to find that level of being respectful. And martial arts teaches that shit big time. So.
Well, if you want to take part in one of DDP's workshops, the ones in the UK or elsewhere, DDP Yoga Workshops.com. Very quickly before we go, actually, if people can't make it to them or want to see you're doing something else in the UK. I wanted you to be able to mention that as well.
Yeah, for the love of wrestling, I'm excited to go there.
Hell of a lineup,
guys. Yeah, man. You know what's really cool about it? It's kind of like there's like a WCW reunion there between Goldberg, you know, Big Show, now Paul White, but I always call him G for Giant, you know, Kevin Nash, Booker T. I mean, you got a pretty elite class from WCW. I know there's a bunch of other guys there too. So it should be a great show. And what I heard, like Medusa came back. I guess she was on it last year or maybe the year before, where what was the last time we did it, before COVID or whatever. But she was like, "You got to do that. That's a great show. Those guys are really good people." So she put it over huge to me, and you know, so I'm looking forward to it. And it isn't just me signing autographs and doing all that. There's also a Q&A too. And there was other people who wanted to do it with me, like my boy Kenny, but couldn't do it because they were like, that you need to split his first class airfare. You know, so like I say, it's going to be a great show. I'm excited about it. And then Birmingham, like I say, it's already sold out, but we got 150 people. We already got 98 people in Glasgow and like 65 in Newcastle. 20 people are fun, but you get over 50, it's infectious of people hulking it up and you know just having a good time. You know, it'll be a good time had by all.
Indeed. Well, it's great to have you here in the UK, and it's an absolute pleasure to chat to you as always, Dallas. Thank you so much for chatting to WhatCulture today.
Hey, it's been your pleasure. Bye. All right, buddy. Thank you, man.